السادة الحضور، الجلسة القادمة والتي تأتي بعنوان هل البنية التحتية الرقمية تواكب تحولات صناعة المحتوى، يدير هذه الجلسة السيد إريك، ويستضيف السيد إريك مستشار استراتيجي لإعلام الذكاء الاصطناعي ومدير المحتوى والشراكات في مهرجان الفيلم العالمي للذكاء الاصطناعي. يستضيف في هذه الجلسة السيد توماس غونكل، المدير العالمي لسوق البث في سكاي لاين الاتصالات، والسيد شاهد خان، شريك أول ورئيس عالمي لقطاع الإعلام والترفيه والرياضة والثقافة في شركة آرثر دي ليتل. Ladies and gentlemen, the next session will be in the digital infrastructure keeping pace with the transformation in the content industry, moderated by Mr. Eric, Media AI Strategy Advisor Content and Partnership Director at World AI Film Festival. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Thomas Gunkel, Global Marketing Director and Broadcast at Skyline Communications. Please welcome Mr. Shahid Khan to the stage. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, it's working. Yeah. So good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. I would like to welcome our two speakers. So actually, we were supposed to be three, but Troy Thibodeau couldn't make it. So we are the three of us. So first, please welcome Shahid Khan. Shahid, you are partner and global head of media, entertainment, sports, and culture at Arthur D. Little. You advise media companies and governments across the US, Europe, and the Middle East on strategy, transformation, and global competitiveness. Yes. I think your mic is not working. Yeah. So now please welcome Thomas Gunkel. Thomas, you are Global Market Director for Broadcast at Skyline Communications. You have more than 20 years of experience working with media organizations on broadcast infrastructure, system integrations, APIs, and orchestration. So you have two very complementary perspectives, and on one side strategy, and on the other side executions. And when it comes to me, actually, I'm working for the World AI Film Festival. This festival was created last year in France, on the Côte d'Azur, and this year it will take place in Cannes in April, on the 21st and 22nd. And yeah, having this position, actually, I'm working with creators in the film, TV series, and advertising industry. So I can see how AI is really changing the perspectives and how the creators are working with AI. But today we are going behind the scenes and to look at the infrastructure. Because the theme today, the title of this session is Digital Infrastructure Keeping Pace with the Transformation in the Content Industry. And for a long time, we thought that infrastructure was no longer a real issue. We had cloud, we had connectivity, we had distribution networks, even satellite, and being digital was no longer the challenge. But with the rise of AI, this is changing again. Today, infrastructure is not only about delivering content, it's about having enough computing power, enough servers, enough data centers, enough energy, and being able to scale fast. And there is another element that has become very critical, it's data. AI only works if data is available, connected, and usable. If data is fragmented or locked in silos, AI doesn't scale, and infrastructure stay underused. So first question to you, Shahid. From a global point of view, are media companies really becoming data-driven today, or are they still struggling with fragmented and siloed data?
Great. I think this whole notion of AI, it's become very generic. So I like to break it down into two different areas. You have generative AI, where you prompt and you add questions and recommendations, and it uses large language models to generate new things, and those new things can be text, they can be videos, they can be graphics. So there's a difference between generative AI, and then the other one is called agentic AI, where you have automated processes looking at data and solving problems on an automatic basis. So let's take AI and break it up into two pieces. In addition to that, everybody talks about ChatGPT and all of these which are called large language models. And the point that you made about energy and infrastructure and data centers, you require a lot of processing because every time you're hitting a query against a large language model, it's hitting these big servers and big infrastructure. However, there are smaller use cases that can be solved with small language models. So the second company that I built, MediaMorph, in 2009, we hired a bunch of guys from MIT, and we had a small language model that took the information on video content, which show, which season, which episode, and it managed how you optimize the licensing to third parties, whether it's Apple or Netflix and all of that. And we were using small language models to do that. So to long answer to your question, but if you look at the larger media companies, they need to look at both. In terms of creativity and all of that, they should figure out how do they use the large language models embedded with their own data. But then there are specific use cases that can be solved with small language models where you don't need that kind of infrastructure. And a lot of the large media companies are not thinking along those lines yet.
Okay, how much does the lack of how much does the lack of accessible data limit AI project and infrastructure investments, in your opinion?
I think everybody is experimenting now. They're all doing pilots. They're all testing. The biggest commitment that I have seen is Amazon. They have separated an AI film studio where they will be making full-fledged episodic television content and movies using AI. So that's the first one that I have seen at scale with committed investment, and they've hired a good friend of mine, Albert Cheng, to run it. And this guy is a legend. If somebody can pull it off, it's him.
Okay. And so before talking about AI or servers, the question is often, do we actually have the data and can it circulate? So my question to you, Thomas, is from what you see in operations, is data availability becoming a bigger issue than infrastructure itself?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that's key nowadays. When we look or take it a bit broader, getting infrastructure is not the challenge anymore. Everybody can buy infrastructure. You can invest in your own data center, or you have public cloud providers where you can just go. Different commercial models are available. That's not a challenge anymore. When you look a few years back, it was completely different. There you could build your business model just on the fact that you could afford certain infrastructure. Those days are gone. Now you have to build your business model around something else, because you cannot distinguish yourself anymore just by the fact you can buy certain infrastructure, which was the case in the past. And that's all about data. And not only our industry, when we look, again, broader in terms of what happens in each and every other industry as well, we talked a lot about digital transformation for many years. So making data available in a digital form, that era is probably already going to an end. We always say to our customers, if you're not digitally transformed yet, you have a serious problem or you don't exist anymore. Because most of the companies that are successful, they have been digitized. The second step is then you have the data available and you need to become data-driven. This is still a way before you should even talk about AI. Data-driven means you have to access the data, you have to inform people, optimize decisions around it, and only then, when this foundation is done, then we talk about data intelligence, AIs, adding LLMs, and that's what we see a lot in companies, that companies try to skip the fundamentals, having a proper data foundation. They experiment with LLMs and AI, and they often fail. So we always say, go a few steps back, optimize first, become data-driven, become digital transformed at the very early days, and then only then look into LLMs and AI. That's key to me.
That's actually a very good point Thomas is making. Getting the data ready is absolutely the foundation. However, my observation is that a lot of these companies are doing it the other way around, where they're just talking about data and they're pulling the data together. Once they have the data, they're trying to figure out what to do with it. I believe that the higher return on investment will come in if you start off with defining the problem statement and figuring out what do you need to accomplish, and then based on that decide what data do you need, where will the data come from, internal and external sources, then bring it all together and then process. So just if you reverse the entire pyramid, you have quicker path to market with much higher return on investment.
Yeah, because it's often the problem that data are in silos, and they are not putting all together. Is that something you see, Thomas, in your at your clients?
When we talk to our customers in the media industry, one of the key problems there, you still have siloed technology, but also much more siloed operations. So you have different operational groups, you have engineering, you have operations, you have scheduling, billing. They use their own tools, often legacy for many, many years, and that's again back to the digital transformation challenge. They are not digitally transformed. Maybe within themselves, in their small little entity, but not across the whole enterprise as a company. And when this doesn't happen, then again, in our eyes, you don't even have to think about adding more to it. You need to have the fundamental problems solved first. And what we say with like infrastructure is just an enabling technology nowadays. You have to have infrastructure, you can do it on your own, cloud, hybrid, everything is there, it's possible, but it just enables you to do more and to become digitized, repeating myself, and to also then use the data, as you said, to make the data available to the right people at the right time, because that's another aspect. Often people say, let's just store everything we have, build a big data lake and see what we do with the data afterwards. But if you don't have a right strategy from day one, storing all data you can ever store does not bring you any further.
It's going to follow the same trajectory that digital followed. So internet came out late 90s. So if you look at early 2000, big media companies would have a separate organization called digital. So the whole company was going in one direction and they had this group of people doing digital. Over time, following 20 years, digital became part and parcel of the way they conduct business. Everything has digital embedded in it. You're seeing the same trend today. You've got the company, they have their day job, and then you have this group called AI. And they're trying to figure out how to insert AI in the company operations. You'll see in the next few years, and I'm sure this will be a much shorter cycle than the digital transformation cycle, where AI should be embedded in every part and parcel of the business. Every function should be AI driven, and not everything needs to be generative AI. Most of the back-end processes should be running on agentic. So that mindset shift needs to happen, and I don't think we're there yet.
Okay, we need to change the mindsets.
Yes.
Yeah. And Thomas, you told me about a very interesting example about Uber, that Uber is really data-driven. It's only data, actually. Yeah, there is no, they don't own the cars, and it's,
Yeah, that's indeed a good example of a company who was successful in an era where you only had taxi companies, very classic, you own a car, you build a classic business model around it, and they completely rethought from a customer perspective. So it was not about technology they invested. They don't own a single car. When you think about it, they are a taxi company without cars, no infrastructure, because it doesn't set them apart. Having a car or not doesn't make a difference. But they invested in the user experience. They took it from the exact same angle there and say, okay, what does the user need? What is the experience we need to give them? And what made them really successful is having the data. They were digitized from day one. You had an app. I can sit here, order a Uber car. I relax. I see exactly when it arrives. I get my payment done in a digital way. That was completely different. And that's what we also need to do. And I think Uber, everybody knows them. To me, is always a very good one because they started this already not yesterday, but many years back.
Yeah, you need to be customer-centric, and it's all about data. For this kind of.
Actually, Thomas, you're making my point. Uber did not define themselves as an automotive company. They defined themselves as a transportation company. They're in the job of transporting people, and they realize you don't need to own cars, right? So the biggest transportation company in the world does not own cars. The biggest hospitality company, Airbnb, doesn't own hotel rooms. It's all data. And if you just take that and you apply that to the media industry, there's a good possibility that the future media companies will not own content, will use data, and if they define themselves to be in the role of satisfying their audience's needs, they may not need to produce content. They may need to be in the middle of it, connecting the right content to the right audiences, using data with AI in the background.
Okay. Question for you, Thomas. AI is increasing demand for computing power very quickly. Where do you see the biggest constraints today? And is it servers? Is it deployment speed, energy, or something else you see with, at your clients?
Well, what we see also a bit compared to the past, the world is moving faster than ever. So it's all about speed. A few years back, you had a few years' time to get a program done, a change management program done. Now, you just don't have any time anymore. When you look in those big cycles from analog to digital, from digital now to maybe data-driven, this goes faster and faster and faster. And like 2 or 3 years back, nobody talked about ChatGPT. Now everybody uses it, everybody, not only us as engineers. So it's about speed. That's key to me. And it's also, again, being prepared and having the infrastructure in place that allows you to adapt and evolve constantly. Uber, again, as an example, they had a first version. You could order a car, then you could order food. Now you can order a companion who walks with you going home because you don't feel safe. And that constantly evolves, and that's the only way to have, again, the right foundation done, and that allows him to adapt faster than ever.
And question to you, Shahid, from a leadership point of view, are CEOs maybe more comfortable investing in visible infrastructure instead of fixing data foundations, even though data is often the real issue?
Yes, and I'll piggyback off of Thomas's earlier point. I think, as he said earlier, that the infrastructure, the processing, the data, all of that is solving. I think the biggest constraint right now is the imagination. We're not thinking big enough. We haven't redefined the way we think. It took us almost a generation to become digital natives. It will take a few years for us to become AI native. So they are trying to figure out how to solve the infrastructure and how to put the data and how to put the processing power. What they need to do is really figure out how to change the mindset and think bigger, imagine bigger, see what the possibilities are. And once you do that, everything else will follow. I think the speed at which infrastructure and the pipes and the processing power is improving, you'll have everything. And it's going to come down to what is our imagination and how big can we think, and then how do we get AI to do what we want it to do.
And do you find it difficult to change the mindsets?
I do. It's, again, we saw this movie before with the internet, the digital revolution. We're seeing this with AI. I think people need to really take a step back and understand what exactly it is, what are the different forms of AI, and where do you apply what. There's no such thing as one AI.
Yeah.
It's multiple things, and each one of them can be a tool to solve a different problem.
Yeah, it's a tool, and you need to identify your problems, your issues, and find the workflow, how to solve your problems, yeah.
Yeah, and as I said earlier, instead of thinking data and thinking AI and what can I do is think your day-to-day job and your problem. If you're a filmmaker, where do I use AI? If I'm looking for locations to shoot my next scene, how do I use AI? If I want to figure out how do I do casting in a movie, how do I use AI? If you start looking at from that point of view, you'll see a lot more results much faster. And for those kinds of problems, the infrastructure, the data, everything is already there.
And do you think leaders are aware enough about AI and how they could use it, or is it difficult for you to push them, to teach them, and yeah?
I think, there needs to be a lot of education and awareness around it. These kinds of conversations are great, and to bring amazing minds like yourself, Thomas, to the table and share your views. I mean, what you're doing with this AI Film Festival is actually brilliant. Nobody else in the world is thinking about it. And you launched your AI Film Festival. Amazon just announced an AI film studio. So this is just the beginning. You guys are on the forefront. Others will follow. It will take a few years.
Yeah, there is a lot of fears around AI. So if you don't teach and educate people, actually it won't, you won't have the best use of it.
I think the fear is there. The fear needs to become bigger. Most people who don't understand the impact of AI may or may not realize that they may not have their jobs if they don't master AI. So the role of people will change in the next 2 to 3 years. And if they don't master AI, I always tell my team when we hire new people that if you don't master AI, not only will you be unemployed, you will be unemployable.
And you will be replaced by someone who master AI.
And that starts off with someone at my level to every single layer in the organization. If you don't master AI, you will be unemployed and unemployable.
Yeah. So there's no alternative. You need to go for AI.
And this is not a 10-year process. This will happen in the next 2 years.
Yeah.
If you look at people businesses, whether it's banking, consulting, advertising, the entry-level people coming in, it's half the size because AI is doing most of the work. You need fewer people, but you need smarter people who know how to use AI to do their jobs. So that entire mindset needs to start off with schools and universities on how you're educating and how you're training people differently to do their day-to-day jobs differently.
And you, Thomas, with your clients, in which industry do you think AI is the most adopt at the moment in advance?
Yeah, as you said, I guess there's simply no alternative to use AI just everywhere. And for us, what we do with our media customers and our platform, which is in essence a orchestration platform to interface with all the customers' infrastructure, AI is used in many different ways. And already 10 years back, we started using AI to do prediction of certain behavior, to detect anomalies, to find patterns. Things where you needed people for many, many years, where they spent many hours finding root cause issues, etc. For engineers. You don't need those skills anymore. And as you said, if you don't adapt, you just become redundant. And that's also what we see a lot in like large media organizations, going back to the other topic you mentioned. Why do those programs sometimes fail? And that starts with digital transformation. They don't take it as a change management program. They run it still as a small project, as you did classic projects in the past, driven by engineers, but it's not lived by the C-level people to say, this is where the direction goes, this is the company's vision, and they forget to onboard the people. So they are afraid. Resistance of change, that's just human behavior. Yeah. The best thing we could do is take it easy, do the same thing every day. And that's not only in job, it's like everywhere. And to make people less afraid of change, which we can't avoid, you need to really educate people, and you need to onboard them from day one in each and every workflow, be it technical, operational, or business workflow you want to change, to convince them that we don't make them redundant, but we will use AI as a tool to be more efficient. Because everybody, when we look into the media industry, we are under pressure. There is globally seen, that's an important thing, like the media consumption time per person has reached a maximum. It's like 6.5 hours per person on the globe each and every day. And during COVID, it was a bit more. Now it goes a little back again, but there won't be much more. But you have more content than ever. And more content than ever means there is less revenue per asset, so we need to be more efficient overall. And just a message like that helps applying successful change management projects. People are so afraid of losing their job or power, and that starts also with sharing data. When I'm in my own operational silo, I secure my job today by not telling people what I'm doing. This is what happens a lot. Nothing is documented, nothing is digital. But we need to help those people that are with companies since 10, 20, 30 years to adapt and accept the fact that they need to change in a positive way. Change was always driven in the past more as a negative. If you don't adapt, you have a problem, but we need to turn it around a bit.
Yeah.
So it's not a technology problem. It's really a human problem, much more.
And there are parts of the industry value chain in media, we work in media, where humans will never be replaced, and I'll give you an example. A lot of the processes, you can apply AI and make them take targeted advertising, right? You can crunch the data and use AI to come up with very targeted advertising. I think my friend Bandar Al-Mashhadi is in the audience here. They're building the first media ratings company in Saudi Arabia, which is going to take all of the data and who's watching what, where, what are the trends, AI can process that. But if you take a step back and look at the definition of AI, by definition, AI looks at historical stuff and does the processing to do things. What it does not have is the human creativity. So let's say people are saying, oh, I can make movies and I can make music using AI. But just the way AI is structured, all you can do is take old movies and old shows and old music and regurgitate them to come up with new content. But the true creativity of new stories and new kinds of music, you still need human beings to do that. So the mindset shift that I was talking about earlier is going to be where you take the commodity stuff and let AI do it, and you really shine as human beings and do what we do best that no machine can do, is create. So that nobody can take the creativity out of us. And this stuff will really free up our time and energy. Instead of wasting it on commodity stuff, we'll focus more on being creative and coming up with bigger ideas and executing bigger ideas.
Yeah, AI is an enabler, enhance creativity. It's a tool, it's not a purpose in itself. Yeah. So Shahid, you work on a global scale. You work in the US, you work in Europe, and you work here in the Middle East. Do you see a difference between the three regions in terms of AI use and mindset?
It is, yes. So again, everybody just puts AI in one bucket, but if you break it up, I think US is very, very advanced in, I think the infrastructure is already there, the chips are there, the data centers are there. They have already gone into trying to figure out what are the applications of AI, whether it's generative AI in solving problems or creating content, or agentic AI in a business process automation. So they're in that mode. In this region, they're talking about AI, but they're talking about the infrastructure. So most conversations that I'm having about AI here, they're still building out the data centers, and they just brought the NVIDIA chips. So they're laying the foundation. There is an Arabic LLM model already here, but the real application, I would say they're about 5 years behind the US.
Okay.
China is very close to the US in catching up, replicating and enhancing quite fast. And Europe has been much behind across everything.
Yeah, behind US,
yeah,
Asia.
So US infrastructure done, processing power is done. It's really the applications and the creativity. This region, still building the infrastructure. China, a little bit of both. Europe, none of the above.
Okay. And you, Thomas, do you see differences?
Yeah, I fully agree. At the beginning, we said infrastructure is not the problem anymore. When you look into the details, it is still a challenge. As you said, in the US, big data centers are around. In Europe, you have a lot of legislations, regulations around the data sovereignty. You cannot use US data centers anymore. That slows down some of the progress. And also talking a bit about infrastructure, when we said you can build your own data center, you can go to a public cloud provider. What we see, and that's also an interesting learning, or was an interesting learning for us, data or infrastructure is not unlimited. Even if you go to Microsoft or Google or AWS, there is a risk when you ask for infrastructure, means you want to spin up something in the cloud, it's not available, you can't do it. Especially in media, where we need more than generic IT infrastructure, you often need GPU acceleration for audio-video processing. This is still commercial off-the-shelf infrastructure, but very media-centric. There's not so much available in those data centers. And we have seen customers, they tried to just do some ad hoc planning, means they were spinning up or tried to spin up infrastructure right before an event starts or a production starts, and it failed because there was no infrastructure available anymore from any of the big cloud providers. Because as a media organization, they need GPU accelerated infrastructure, special infrastructure. And that is a risk, and that's also what we discuss with customers a lot, how to overcome that. You need to plan upfront ahead of time. And that's also a different way of working. That's change management, again, that people cannot just walk in the morning and use their own infrastructure because it's always there. Cloud infrastructure is slightly different. You cannot book it in advance, usually. This is an interesting topic as well for me. I cannot go to Google, Amazon, or so and say, in 4 weeks I have this production, I need a guarantee that you give me that servers. All they say, if you want it in 4 weeks, start it now. So they make still enough money. For sure, this will also change over time because there's more competition coming. But people need to schedule things ahead of time. When you look back into how people were treating infrastructure in the past, they were always buying more infrastructure than they would ever need. So first they planned for worst case in their own data center or their own technical rooms. Then they added a little bit of headroom. And what was the situation there? What we say, the infrastructure utilization rate went dramatically down. The best infrastructure you can have runs 24/7. You use it 24/7. If you only have one production a month and you still run it 24/7, that's a bad investment. But in the past, this was the only option. Now we have all the flexible models, but you need to change your workflows again and plan things ahead of time. It's like planning people, you also need to plan for infrastructure. It's pretty much the same, but sometimes companies, they still forget about it, that they need to adapt their workflows as well.
And so it's the other big problem that's coming out of the AI revolution is energy. People are building data centers, but now they also have to build power plants. They have to make sure that there's enough energy that's going to be powering the next 10 years of infrastructure that will power AI. And that's where the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is at an advantage. I think it's about 5 to 6% lower energy cost here across the global averages. They've built a factory outside of Riyadh called Alat, where they're building laptops and cell phones, and they're all made robotically using AI, right? So the robots have embedded AI, and they're learning how to make cell phones and laptops, and they're manufacturing them and improving them on the actual process itself. But they have a cost advantage doing that because of the lower cost of energy. So even though you may not have a labor cost advantage, but if you're using robotics with AI and you have lower energy cost, you have a much bigger advantage from a commercial point of view.
It will be more of a challenge in Europe, maybe in the US.
Horrible. And
Yeah.
both Europe and US, because they are private, what will happen? They're building all these data centers and they're building all these power plants, but the cost of that will be passed on to the consumer. So my electricity bill in New York will go up because I'm subsidizing the data center that's processing AI for some commercial entity, which is unfair. But that's literally the way it's heading.
Okay. And yeah, to conclude, final questions to both of you. In one sentence, what should media leaders fix first over the next 5 years? What should be their roadmap with AI?
I think their mindset, they should fix their head.
Yeah. Okay. Head is first.
They should
very
change
human.
the way they think. They should change the way how they define the problem. And everything else is already there.
Okay, infrastructure are ready.
Yes, so I don't. They
change
don't
the
need
mindset
engineers.
first.
They need therapists.
Okay. And educate your collaborators and
Awareness.
See what are the best practice for
Absolutely, and
different
you can
uses.
go take classes and you can read books, but just go on YouTube and start watching stuff on the different forms of AI and all the stuff that's going on. There's so much wealth of information out there. You just need to get the awareness and get educated, and then you will get the ideas to figure out how to handle it.
Yeah. And you, Thomas, what would you advise?
Yeah, very similar, but again, first for me is like get digitally transformed, become data-driven, that's the foundation, and then use AI not as an add-on on any of the existing workflows or processes. It must be naturally embedded. As you said, it's not something you do as an afterthought and experiment with it. It already starts building the foundation with AI and use it as a tool to help you to become more efficient overall, do more with less, and become also more creative with it.
Yeah, experiment. Yeah. Okay, great. So thank you, Shahid, and thank you, Thomas, for this conversation. It was really interesting. Thank you all.
Thank you, and good luck with your AI Film Festival.
Yes, in April we have session as well in South Korea, in Japan, in Brazil, in China, and maybe one day in Saudi Arabia. I hope. So, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You.